Hey guys, Charlie Murphy here. Thank you for choosing my video. We're playing another session of 126 Max No Limit on Ignition, and the games are up and running, so we'll jump right into the action. Lower right-hand table will raise King 8 suited from middle position, part of about a 21% raise first in range. Got two what appears to be recreational player callers in position. Another shorter stack calls are the big blind as well. We'll be checking range here on this. Essentially any board with the multi-way with all those players out there and in position to us. And we can just fold king high with the backdoor flush draw with the half pot bet and all the calls out there. We can defend very, very tightly in multi-way pots, especially when they're using larger sizings, when they're sizing up to that half pot bet. Lower left-hand table, blind on blind, got a 3x open. Jack 7 offsuit just outside of standard defense range for me. It's pretty close to being the kind of hand you can put in there as a pre-flop 3-bet bluff. Or perhaps even call with it, but I think it's probably best played as a fold. Games look pretty promising at the moment. Short stacks, players limping. As long as the software cooperates and lets me open and close tables as I desire, I should be able to find some pretty good ones based on what I'm seeing so far. Aces versus aces on the lower left-hand table. Middle position raises first in the upper left-hand table. We're not going to be 3-betting with all of our suited aces in that spot. Ace-7 suited should just be folded. Probably 3-bet the Broadway aces and a couple of wheel aces. 3-bet 8 or 9% in that spot. But I don't need to be 3-betting all my suited aces in that situation. Got an unusual sized open there on the lower left-hand table, mid-position, a 2.25x open. We don't need to be defending with our raggy offsuit aces in that situation. We'll defend a little bit wider than against a standard 2.5x open, but probably something like our offsuit broadways and maybe ace-9, suited connectors, 1 and 2 gappers. Any 2 cards, maybe 6 or 7 or higher that are suited, all our suited aces and kings, and most of our suited queens. Got a squeeze situation on the upper right-hand table. Under the gun opens 2.5x. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet our king-queen suited in that spot. Be 3-betting 5 or 6%. Pretty tight out of the big blind. But something like jacks plus ace-king, most of our suited broadways. Maybe ace-5 suited. Get called by both players in position. Because I'm out of position to both players, I'm going to go ahead and check my range. So I'm going to check and under-rep my hand here. I've got top pair second kicker. I'm not necessarily thinking that I'm beat, but I want to get some more information and just sort of protect my range by checking it here with 2 players in position. We get a player going all in. That seems spazzy and ridiculous. I can't imagine he's doing that with a hand like an overpair, ace-queen, a set of 9s. I guess it's possible. I shouldn't say I couldn't imagine it, but I have to imagine he's doing that with silly draws and all kinds of stupid pieces of that board, because it indicates he's a fish if he's making that bet size. Because he's acting like a fish, there's no way I'm going to fold my top pair, so I'm just going to go ahead and get the money in. We're against a gut shot. His overcard is not live, and we pick up a stack. Go ahead and get a tag on him, too, in case we forget, as he hasn't shown us anything to be a fish that he limped yet. So it wasn't blatantly obvious until he went and used that screwy bet sizing. And then it's further confirmed by the fact that he's just overbet jamming a gut shot for no good reason there, multi-way. He's calling a raise from middle position from under the gun with king queen offsuit. That tells us he's not a serious player. Calling a 3-bet then after a squeeze, and then the initial raiser calls. We didn't know that at the time. The only thing we knew at the time was that screwy bet size that he used. But he made our life and decision very easy by telling us that, hey, he's probably not a serious player when he goes ahead and uses a bet size that no serious player would ever use. Upper left-hand table, blind on blind, we'll raise king 6 suited. We'll raise all of our suited kings in that situation. We'll raise about 45% absent some real good reason to deviate. Upper left-hand table, we're going to fold queen deuce on the button. I typically don't raise all my suited queens. I usually draw the line at queen 3 suited or better and fold queen deuce, but it's pretty close. Lower left-hand table, we had a poster who checks. It folds around to us. We check in from the big blind. We have a gut shot, but it's the low end. The low end of the straight. He's not very deep. He's betting full pot. I'm just going to go ahead and let that one go. If he was deeper, some reason to think that we can win a bigger pot if we hit. I'd stick around if I had other outs like gut shot with overcards. If I had gut shot to a nut type hand, especially when we're deeper, that would be reason to continue. There with 5-4 on the 8-8-7 flop when we're not deep, I'm just going to go ahead and check fold that against a bet size of any merit. When he bet, well, I guess it wasn't full pot. He bet 4 into something like 450, 475, but still, it's a larger bet size, which means I should fold a lot more. I don't need to continue with the hand that weak. I think I'd rather be floating with even things like 2 overcards and a backdoor flush draw than that particular gut shot, that 5-4 low end to the gut shot in that situation. I think it's just going to let me realize more equity, get to the river more, pick up cards that on the turn that can continue and just call down. Lower left-hand table, get a 2.5x open from middle position. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet our cutoff. We're going to be 3-betting about a 10% range there. All of our suited broadways, pocket nines or better, ace jack plus king queen, and a couple of suited wheel aces like ace 5, ace 4. And folding everything else. You get flop top 2 on a very coordinated board. We could still be beat by the nut straight, or pocket 10s, or I guess if he called with pocket jacks as well, he really shouldn't have aces here. Those should be 4-bet. We're just going to go ahead and put in our range bet. I mean, this hand is obviously very strong, but in no way is nutted at the same time. He check folds and doesn't give us any kind of tricky decision with our strong but beatable hand. Seat 1 on the upper left-hand table hasn't limped, but he's playing 50 blinds deep, and he's playing 37-5 over 21 hands. I think that tells me enough that he is not a serious player. Although he's the only recreational player there, so we may be getting rid of that table at some point. The two tables on the right-hand side, though, look amazing. I mean, we may have all recreational players on the lower right-hand table. And the upper right-hand table, we already stacked a guy once, and there's at least 3. Player into my immediate left, seat 2, is most likely a reg. He opened under the gun to 2.5x to $5. That's probably not a fish doing that. That's probably a reg doing that. And 5 seats playing full stacked and hasn't played a hand through an orbit and a half, so he's probably a regular player as well. But we'll wait to pass judgment till we know for sure. Lower left-hand table, recreational player limps the button. The small blind completes. We're going to go ahead and raise that up. Going to use about 150% pot size. First, so we're going to go ahead and pop that up to about 11. Going to be raising pretty tight in that spot, about 13%. Pocket 8s or better, suited broadways, ace 9 through 10-9 suited, and then offsuit versions of ace 10 plus, king jack plus. Well, when we get limp re-raised, now, normally I'd find that move very, very strong, and it's not to say that it's not necessarily. I mean, he hasn't raised before, and now he's limp re-raised, and he has, however, limped a couple other hands before this. The thing is, ace-king is just too strong a hand. I'm not going to talk myself into folding ace-king just because he limp re-raises. It's just too good to pick up that dead money or get him in with a hand that we beat or at least flipping against. So we're not going to go ahead and worry that ace-king is in bad shape here. We're just going to get that money in. And we run into aces, but that's how it goes. I'm not folding ace-king to a recreational player for 100 blinds. I have been running into aces an awful lot pre-flop this month, but nothing that's going to make me stop playing the game the way it's supposed to be played. What is frustrating, however, is this ignition software that seems to lag in timeout and otherwise make my life a bit more difficult than it needs to be. Oh, and I get it in and get top 2 and it's still no good. Upper right-hand table, the recreational player limps middle position. We're going to go ahead and isolate him for a pot-sized raise. From the cutoff, we're going to use something like our middle position raise first, then range with the one limper out there. So we'll raise him about 21% of hands. Get called by a recreational player in the big blind, and the limper comes along as well. We get a Jack 7-5 two-tone board. We do have a bottom pair in the backdoor flush draw. I think I'm going to be content to check this back multi-way, reevaluate based on what they do and what comes on the turn. Turn is the 9 of hearts. We get led into for 2/3 by the original limper. That board is not that good for us anymore at all. We didn't pick up any of our backdoor equity. We don't have any kind of blockers or removal to the straights or the flush. I'm just going to go ahead and fold that. Lower right-hand table, a recreational player opens large on the button. I'm going to defend, or I'm going to 3-bet rather a lot tighter because of his large size, and I'm not going to 3-bet my ace-7 suited in that particular situation. Lower right-hand table, recreational player limps, middle position. We're going to go ahead and isolate from the button using roughly our cutoff raise first in range, including ace-8 suited. Recreational player calls out of the small blind, and the limper folds. He checks to us. We're going to go ahead and put in a small range bet. Got various overcard and backdoor straight and flush draws to bail us out. We turn the ace. This guy is short. Normally, I would check back a more middling ace in a situation like this, but he's fishy and short, and I could see a hand like 9-10 getting suspicious and giving me all 3 streets for his stack, so I'm going to go for it. And if he somehow has a hand like ace-6, ace-deuce, I'm just going to pay him off. I'm going to go ahead and bet about 2/3 in the pot to set up another roughly 2/3 river jam. He folds out. I guess the other merit to checking back is that it gives him a chance to turn hands into a bluff and lead into me, and I've got a nice bluff catcher. But I think trying to get 3 streets there when I could see a hand like, pocket 7s, 10-9, getting just too sticky and not wanting to believe that I've got the ace and paying me off for the whole amount. Lower left-hand table, we had a limper and the small blind complete, so we isolate up out of the blinds with King-Jack to 11. And we take that one down. Lower left-hand table, right-hand table, we raised 10-7 suited first in from the cutoff. We got called by recreational players in position and in the big blind, so we'll go ahead and check range to the in-position player. Lower left-hand table, recreational player limps button. We complete small blind with King-8. Lower right-hand table, we turn top pair. We're going to go ahead and put in a small bet because of the multi-way nature of that board. Want to either get some value or deny some equity from overcards or ace-high. Lower left-hand table is breaking, but we have a recreational player, though, so I'll stick around and play heads up. Flop checks through. We're going to go ahead and start betting in him on the turn. Got top and bottom pair. Not the best river for us as it counterfeits our 2-pair and completes a possible flush. I am still going to go ahead and try to value bet my jack, though. Heads up, we'll raise ace-jack first in on the button. We'll go ahead and put in the small range bet on the king 8-3 after he defends pre-flop and checks to us on the flop. Got overcard, backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw. Turn is the 9 of diamonds. Flush closing turn. We don't have the flush, but we do have the nut flush draw and blocker. I'm going to go ahead and continue betting using the half pot size on the flush closing turn, as I don't want to bet as polarized. I want to bet lots of more middling one pair hands for value and equity denial purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and continue bluffing on the river. I'm not going to do anything crazy like overbet here against this guy. Even if I were to overbet, I don't think this is the particular ace of diamonds combo I would use. I'm just going to use a more standard 2/3 type size. He had top pair and he looks us up, which is what he should be doing. Pumps the button. We check in 4-3. We raise first in, heads up, 6-5 suited. We get a king-jack 6 rainbow flop. We'll go ahead and put in our small range bet. Gin card for us on the turn, hitting that 6. Going to go ahead and use the overbet size on that particular texture. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind. 8-4 suited, a little bit looser than I would open as a standard. No longer heads up on the lower left-hand table. We will raise first in from the button with queen 9 offsuit, part of a standard 44-ish% raise first in range. Upper right-hand table, recreational player limps under the gun. From the button, I normally raise first in with something like my cutoff raise first in range, about 28%. This is a bit looser than I usually would raise. I've been pretty tight, and we know he's a bad player. These guys don't seem like they're too aggressive or out of line. I'm going to go a bit looser than I usually do and just go ahead and try to play heads up with this guy. Get a queen 9-7 two-tone board. Going to go ahead and put in the small range bet. Quickly called. Turn is a 3, putting a second flush draw out there. I'm going to be using overbet or check on that particular texture, and a hand like second pair is very firmly in the check back camp. I can bluff catch an awful lot of potential runouts, or I can pick up trip 9s and go for some value or even a raise if he leads into me. He bets pot. I guess in theory, if he has a better 9, he could have a better 9 than me here. However, I think I can probably still get called by some Queen X type stuff. Given that he's a recreational player, I think I want to try to go ahead and get the stack. This is kind of close, a little aggressive, but I think I should do it. And he folded without thinking about it too much, so. Didn't instantly fold, but folded pretty quick. And I would love to reload this fourth table, but the Ignition software is not cooperating with me again on that front. Also makes me a little bit nervous to shuffle any other tables out if I don't think they're the good ones. I'd like to be hunting tables that are loaded with fish, but the software won't let me. It will let me load zone, but I don't play zone, and I don't want to start trying to do it here on the video for sure. So, trying to jog the software into realizing that it should be loading tables, and I do in fact have money in my account to buy in. Lower left-hand table, I raised the cutoff first in with ace-9 offsuit. It's probably about the worst offsuit ace I raised there, part of about a 28% range. Against the 3-bet in position, that's an easy fold. Upper right-hand table, we'll raise pocket tens first in under the gun, part of about an 18% raise first in range. Lower right-hand table, it limps, and we check in from the big blind, so we're going to check our range out of the big blind on that 9-5-3 board. Upper right-hand table, the big blind calls me, get an ace-5-4 two-tone board, and we're going to go ahead and put in a small range bet. Lower right-hand table, we get a pot-sized bet from that limper. We can just go ahead and fold our second pair without any sort of meaningful backdoor draws. Upper right-hand table, the range bet got called, and the turn is another ace. Puts a second flush draw out there and also pairs the board. Not a terrible card, and that it's harder for him to have the ace now. I'm going to be using overbet or check on that board pairing turn right there, and I'm going to be, pretty much just overbetting. Fives full, fours full, and like good aces, ace king, ace queen. Probably only ace king or ace queen in this formation. I'm going to be checking back the pocket tens for sure. Probably not even trying to value bet, but considering bluff catching. Against the pot size bet, though, probably not. Let me think about this for a minute. The pot size bet is about neutral as far as bluffiness goes. But big blind versus under the gun, less so. Ace high flop texture, also less so. I think this is not a spot to bluff catch. Lower left-hand table got called in position and out of position, so I'll go ahead and range check. Not a great card for us, the ace on the turn. However, we're going to go ahead and put in a small bet at this point when everyone checks around on the flop. I can still be getting called by 4x, 6x, 5x type hands, stuff without the ace. I'm using the small bet because we're multi-way. River is the queen. That is the best card I could hope for. I'm just going to go ahead and move him all in for an overbet. He's got the ace. I'm going to get paid off. Lower right-hand table, I'm going to go ahead and isolate the cutoff limper with something like my cutoff raise first in range, about 28%, including the pocket kings. We get an ace-high flop, however. I am going to go ahead and put in the small range bet, but that's not the flop I was looking for with pocket kings against a short stack. Ace-9-3 two-tone. He calls us on the flop, so we're going to go ahead and check back on the turn, assuming he doesn't donk into us. He does. Double flush draw board again. This is normally an overbet or check situation. Given that he's so short, I don't need to overbet to get the money in, so I guess I'd probably just be going half pot here. River 9 of clubs completes the backdoor flush draw and also pairs the flop middle pair. I don't think there's a ton of merit in trying to value bet now. Is that the backdoor flush got there, the ace high still beats me, the flop second pair is now trips that beats me. Might be some merit in bluff catching had he let into me, given the sizing, depending on what sizing he used. With kings, I'm just going to show them down, and we're against 7-6 offsuit. I'm not even sure why that floated the flop or played the way it did in any way, shape, or form. But he did what he did. He's a recreational player. Upper right-hand table, 2 players limp before me from the button. I'm going to go ahead and raise up for pot. Given that I've got 2 limpers, I'm going to treat it more like about 2 spots back, something like my middle position raise first in range, about 21%, including Jack-9 suited. Both players call. We get a queen, deuce, deuce, two-tone flop. We do have the flush draw. I think I want to check this particular one back without having the overcard. I don't want to bet and get jammed by the short stack and get myself in a bad pot odds situation. I'm going to go ahead and check this one back. Lower right-hand table, the recreational limps and then jams all in over our queens. We're going to go ahead and snap them off with the queens. We're against queen 4. That's a great scenario. Don't love that he picked up a flush draw on the flop, but we already did everything that matters pre-flop. Turn on the upper right-hand table. They check again, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the small bet this time. Consider following through on the river if we get one caller. Get a 4x open. Given that he's opening 4x, I'm going to get a bit tighter than I normally would here. Like, for example, against a 2.5x open, I'm going to 3-bet about 10% there. Against a 3x open, it goes down to about 9%. Given that he's getting even larger and he's also been on the loose passive side, so his pre-flop range is that when he raises is probably fairly strong. Some of those more marginal raises that would normally be in my cutoff versus middle position 3-bet range are going to become fold. To hands like King Queen, I think, can more safely go in the muck. We'll check out of our big blind here in this multi-way limped pot on the lower right-hand table. Pot size bet. We only have some marginal backdoor draws. We're just going to go ahead and fold our 10-7 on 9-5 deuce two-tone. Excuse me. Lower right-hand table, get a recreational player who's been very loose and passive, opens 3x in middle position, then he gets called by an in-position player. Given that this player has been so loose and passive, I'm going to treat this formation as being like a slightly tighter one than it actually is. I think I'm still going to be stacking off with queens plus ace king, though, against a guy like this. This is a squeeze. We'll size our raise up as well. Probably raising 6 or 7% in a spot like this. I don't want to 3-bet against the loose passive short stack using a large size up here, but king, queen, jack, queen suited is just too good a hand to fold from the big blind where we're closing the action there. So I will go ahead and call and then check range to the better. It checks through. We now have an open ender as opposed to just a gut shot to go with our flush draw. We're going to go ahead and start betting now using a small bet in the multi-way pot. And our draw bricks out, but we're going to heads up on the river, so we're not going to surrender our queen high. We're going to go ahead and continue betting, use about a 2/3 bet size here. And we take them down. Lower right-hand table, we raise king-jack in the cutoff, and we check range with the in-position player out there. The flop checks through. We now have an ace on the turn. There's a backdoor flush draw out there, and we have the Broadway straight. So we're going to go ahead and start betting using the small size because we're multi-way. And we get raised by the in-position player. Raised large, raised about pot, and then we get re-raised to 90. We've got the stone cold nuts. Nothing to do but go ahead and get this all in and hope that at least one of these players does not have the same hand as us so we can pick up some value. Raising player, and we're against a set of tens. Oh, and we can't dodge it. He hits quads, but we played the hand well. That's all that matters. Hallelujah. Ignition's letting us put our fourth table back up. Upper right-hand table will raise ace-10 first in. On the button, part of about a 44% range, and then lower left-hand table, blind on blind, will raise queen-9 offsuit as part of about a 45% raise first in range. We will check range to the big blind on the 8-6-4 board, two-tone board. He bets small. We got two overcards, various backdoor straight draws. I'm going to go ahead and check call that one time. It's a little thin, especially without a club in the hand, to give us extra backdoor equity and the ability to continue on some club turns, but I think it's still worth doing. He goes ahead and checks back the turn. We have queen high, so jack on the flush closing river. We're going to go ahead and turn our hand into a bluff because we're not going to be showing down queen high. I don't know if this one gets through all that much, but yeah. He could have easily missed as well, as he was just stabbing with his overcard air. Lower left-hand table, we'll raise king-8 first in from the button. Get called by a short stack big blind player. We get an ace-4 deuce two-tone flop. We do have the relevant diamond in our hand with the king. He donks into us. I don't put a ton of credence in that donk bet being strong, though in an ace-high flop, they're a bit more likely to actually have some good hands. Think about if I want to float this for a minute. I probably don't, but you know, the donk lines get less bluffy by the fish as well as ace-high flops. I think I can go ahead and fold that, even if I manage to bang off a backdoor flush. One, it's very obvious because there'll be 4 flush on the board. And he's also not that deep, so even if I'm trying to hit some kind of miracle runner-runner type hand, I want to know I'm going to get paid off when I do it, and I can't get paid off when he's got nothing to pay me with. So for those reasons, I think folding the flop is okay. Upper right-hand table, we'll raise the button first in with Queen 10 suited. Upper left-hand table, blind on blind, will raise with Ace-5 offsuit. Lower left-hand table, 9-8 suited, just outside of standard under the gun open range for me, but pretty close. Upper left-hand table, King-7 offsuit, also just outside of standard open range for the button for me. So those are both close hands. If you want to open those, I don't think it's a big deal one way or the other. Upper right-hand table on the King-8-6 rainbow flop, we'll go ahead and range bet small. Got various backdoor straight and flush draws with our particular holding. Upper right-hand table, lower right-hand table, 3x open from the button. We can go ahead and defend with King-9 offsuit. That one's kind of on the cusp, but just inside the range of hands I want to defend there. We'll go ahead and check to the raiser. Upper right-hand table, we get check raised. We can go ahead and fold that. Upper left-hand table, we raise kings first in, is from the middle position, part of a 21% raise first in range. And on the lower right-hand table, he checks back the flop. We now have a gut shot on the second nut flush draw if a 4 flush bangs off on the river. I'm going to go ahead and start betting that using a small bet because we're out of position. Calls us. We brick off. 5 is a board pairing river with the 5. Doesn't complete our straight or the flush. We are going to turn our hand into a bluff, bet about 2/3. Got quickly snapped off by ace-queen high with the ace-high flush draw, so it's a good thing we didn't hit our draw. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind, we raise first in, and we get 3-bet by the big blind. I'm going to defend this hand, obviously, just trying to decide if I want to 4-bet this or not. I think it's probably a pretty standard 4-bet and call off, even if the guy's not terribly aggressive. Which he hasn't been, but even against more passive players, I think we can still stack off with jacks plus ace-king. Mix in a few bluffs like ace-queen offsuit, ace-5 suited, if that's going to be our stack-off range. He jams. Call off. Racing against ace-king. He hits top pair, but we turn our set, and looks like we're going to win this particular race. Lower left-hand table, and under the gun player opens 2.5x. A fishy player defends from the cutoff. We're going to go ahead and close the action from the big blind by calling with our ace-8 suited, and we'll check range to the pre-flop raiser. Lower right-hand table, I don't open all my ace-x from the button. I usually fold a couple of the smallest ones, like ace-2, ace-3. Get a 2.5x open from the button on the upper right-hand table. We can defend that with queen 10 offsuit from the big blind. Lower left-hand table, the flop checks through. We now have second pair top kicker. It's not too likely anybody has the trip queens. We're going to go ahead and put in a small bet. And we're going to go ahead and check call with our open-ended straight draw with no diamond on the upper right-hand table. He barrels again. I don't have any sort of flush draw blocker, overcards, anything like that. So I think I can actually go ahead and play that particular combo very passively and just go ahead and check fold it against a pretty decent-sized turn bet. Might be some merit to check raising the flop as well with that hand, although I think I might rather prefer to have a diamond in my hand to do it. Upper left-hand table, we're in the small blind facing a min raise from middle position. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet him there with the pocket eights. This spot I'd be 3-betting something like 9% against that. We'll go ahead and 3-bet the heads up button opener with our ace-10 suited in the upper right-hand table from our big blind. He calls us. We flop top pair on the 10-8-4 two-tone board, so we'll go ahead and put in the small range bet. Pick up top two now on the upper right-hand table. At about 60% and plan to jam the river. River the king, not the most ideal river, but we should be pretty safe. It's not too likely he has queen 10 here, though, or queen jack. Though I guess it was a double gut shot on the turn, so it's not out of the question. But we've got a pretty strong hand here. We're going to go ahead and just ship this all in. Lower right-hand table or left-hand table, we have second pair, backdoor flush draw. He bets 440 into 2750, so we're going to go ahead and float that for sure. We isolated the limper from the button with queen 6 offsuit towards the bottom of our ISO range right there. All this down. Let's see what he had. Ace queen of spades. That float burned him. That's 4 into 40. We've got a pair. I think showing that down is pretty trivial. We're going to go ahead and do it. Not going to bluff raise there. Not multi-way. We're going to go ahead and 4-bet the ace-king to get this in here. Quickly folds. We open king 5 suited from the cutoff, get called by 2 recreational players from both blinds. We flop an ace-king 5 rainbow board. I am going to go ahead and bet this one in position for value, using a small bet because we're multi-way. Against the min raise, and we're in the big blind in the lower right-hand table. We're just going to go ahead and flat with the pocket nines. No need to raise that against the min raise. Against the min raise, you call a lot more from the big blind and raise a lot less. Interesting that we get check raised on the lower left-hand table. We're going to go ahead and continue with our bottom 2 pair. Small blind folds out. He doesn't continue betting. That's not a great turn for us. Now, hands like king 10, ace 10, queen jack all get there that beat me. I'm going to go ahead and play this one a bit more cautiously, check it back, and look to bluff catch or value bet the river. Looks like we got a min raise and 2 callers in the upper left-hand table. We'll call the min raise and close the action with our 9-7. Lousy river for us there, the jack put in the force. I'm just going to show down my 2 pair against ace jack. Maybe I should have value bet the turn. I don't know. Got a king-king-9 board, and we got this player betting 3/4 into a 4-way pot. I think I can go ahead and fold the 9 when there's that many players out there and he's betting that large. I just don't need to defend very much. And I think it's probably better to float with hands like king-queen, or I'm sorry, queen-jack, queen-10, jack-10, you know, some draw potential, as opposed to the 9 that's way ahead or way behind the king, with no real odds to improve whatsoever, and I'm probably going to be against a king more often than I'd like to be, given that we have that many players out there and he's using a size that large. We do get to go back after him here now, though, in that he opened 3x under the gun, and we get the 3-bet out of our small blind with the ace-jack suited. Only 3-betting about 6% here, but I am going to be 3-betting ace-10 plus, king-jack plus, pocket-nines plus, ace-queen. Lower right-hand table, we'll raise ace-7 offsuit first in on the button. I think this is supposed to be a range check board on the upper left-hand table. I really need to brush up my knowledge of these 3-bet pots out of position as the raiser, but I'm pretty sure a board like that, that low board is going to be that low board is going to be a range check. So I'm going to go ahead and check my ace-jack. He bets about half pot. I'm just going to go ahead and check fold that one. We're already in a very tight formation under the gun as well, which, you know, I'm not completely certain, but that given that our range is his raise first in range should be more snug, as should my 3-bet range, as should his calling range because of that formation and how tight it is. And then when he goes and bets, I'm just not going to start getting involved with a hand like ace-jack, no backdoor flush draw. Middle position, we're going to raise first in with the pocket threes in the lower right-hand table. Part of about a 21% raise first in range. That's not really solver approved. I like having the pocket pairs in my raise first in range. Lets me have all the sets on any board. We'll check range to the in-position caller on the queen 8-7 two-tone flop. Against pretty much any bet, I'm going to just go ahead and check fold this, especially against a pot-sized bet for 1/3 of his remaining stack. Having trouble finding another open table right now. Upper left-hand table, the middle position player raises first in to 3x. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet this guy. About a 9% range. Pocket nines are better. Most of my suited broadways, ace-jack plus, king-queen, and a couple of suited wheel aces. Pretty standard stuff, really. Under the gun raises first in 3x. Get a caller in position. I think I'm going to squeeze this up and get this in. I don't know too much about his range, but he's playing half stack. You know, it's only a second hand of the table. He's playing half stack. We've got the dead money from the caller out there and the bloated pot from the larger pre-flop size. I'm just going to go ahead and raise this and get this in against the guy playing 49 blinds deep. They both quickly fold, and then we pick up 7.5 blinds of dead money with our move. Upper right-hand table, we'll raise sevens first in from the cutoff. Upper left-hand table, blind on blind. King 7 is just outside of standard open range for me, so I'll go ahead and fold it. He has been pretty tight, so maybe we could go ahead and get away with robbing him a bit more, but I like to keep my pre-flop ranges pretty fundamentally sound and orthodox and don't start making too many wild deviations, at least not to the looser side. I will deviate tighter when it's obvious that players themselves are playing too tight. So I won't 3-bet them as aggressively kind of thing. But for the most part, I keep my raise first in ranges reasonably close to solver approved, at least frequencies, if not the exact hand selection. I think that's a good fundamental way to play to give yourself a good base to work off of. Upper right-hand table, we raise the cutoff first in, about a 28% raise first in range, including our King 7 suited. We get called by a recreational player from the small blind. We get an Ace, King, Queen, two-tone flop. We do have the flush draw as well. We're going to go ahead and put in the small range bet on this board. Upper left-hand table, we'll raise middle position first in, again with about a 21% raise first in range. With the Jack 10 suited. We get check called by the recreational player on the upper right-hand table. This is going to be a prime hand to check back. Oh, he leads into us, so just flatting is going to be easy. Had he checked, I'm going to be using an overbet or check size on that board. Overbetting my nut straights, my sets of kings, my sets of queens. And probably ace, king, ace, queen. King, queen, I might check back just to mix that up a little bit. And I might even overbet my ace, jack, ace, 10 because it's got some removal to the straights as well as the top pair. River is a board pairing 4. It bangs off turn river 4-4. It doesn't kill as the flush. He checks to us. I think I'm going to be content to just go ahead and check my showdown with my king, not try to fold him off a pair of aces, not try to value bet, a queen X or something like that. Upper left-hand table, we range bet small on 10-4-3 monotone. We get called by a somewhat fishy big blind player. We turn a jack for top 2. There's a backdoor flush draw out there as well. I'm going to be using overbet or check size here, and the top 2 pair is going to be in the overbet line. And Ignition, again, is not letting me load up a new table. So we're back to that, like from earlier in the session. Now it thinks my balance is too low, which is also not the case. So no fourth table again for the moment. Sorry, guys. Get it back as soon as it lets me. Lower right-hand table, we get a 3x open from the button. Even though this guy's been a bit tighter and more passive, I'm not going to fold a hand like ace-8 suited in the big blind. I'm going to go ahead and defend that and check to him. 2.5x open on the upper right-hand table. Again, this player has been very tight and passive, but we got pretty good odds. We can go ahead and call that. Lower right-hand table, he checks back the flop. We're going to start stabbing at it. If he doesn't show that he wants it, maybe we're going to see if he'll let us have it. He quickly calls. I don't know that I'm really going to fold him off much in the way of any pairs. I think I'd rather just try to show down my ace high, especially with that board pairing river. We'll be folding if he bets as well. He could very easily have kings in his check back range that now have a pair, and he's looking to either call down or value bet. Upper right-hand table, we will check call. Now, when he bets that small size in position, I think we actually can go ahead and turn this into a check-raise bluff. We do block 9-8 and ace-9, which is a bit nice too, so I'm going to go ahead and put him in a tough spot. Now, and he had the ace-9, so I think if he's got the king, it might work. He was betting small, just trying to get me to pay him, and he induced me into bluff raising. It's okay, those don't have to work all the time. You need to be a bit more cautious about doing against recreational players, though, and which I think he is he has limped. Get a min raise from the cutoff in the upper left-hand table. We can go ahead and defend a ton of hands. King Jack offs is very easy to defend against that situation. He checks back. I'm going to start stabbing at this small, following through a lot of rivers as well. Calls. River of 3. We've got 2 overcards, king high. No real reason to think this hand is going to check down good in this particular line. You pick up another small one. That small blind on big blind spot, should it fold around to me, I'm not even going to raise queen 8 in that spot. A bit outside my standard open range, so I'm just going to go ahead and click the check fold button. Or the auto fold button, regardless of what anyone does before me. Upper right-hand table, we'll raise the cutoff first in with pocket 10s, part of about 28% raise first in range. Same scenario on the lower right-hand table, this time with 6-7 suited, also a hand we're going to raise first in. Upper right-hand table, he checks to us on ace 3-3 two-tone. We'll put in the small range bet. Lower right-hand table, we'll check range to the recreational player in position on the ace 9-4 two-tone. Upper right-hand table, he check called the flop bet, so we're going to check back on that 8 turn, putting the backdoor flush draw out there. And we'll check fold our 7 high with no real backdoors. I think I'm content to show down my 3s full of 10s here in this spot. Not too much I can really value bet against this guy, and the recreational players do have a disproportionately high amount of ace-X in their pre-flop range, such as ace-5 offsuit. So as much as I like value betting thinly, and it's okay to value cut yourself, that's a spot where there's no reason to value cut myself and let his excessively loose pre-flop play be rewarded by getting that value bet in from me. Now, if he were to go ahead and lead that river, that might make my decision a bit tougher. You know, he might get a value bet out of me there depending on how he sizes that river bet. So I think he probably should have led the river with that hand. Well, I guess he doesn't know that I'm not going to bluff. I will turn my air into bluffs. Maybe his check isn't that bad. It's probably not a big deal either way. I'm making too big a deal out of it, that's for damn sure. Lower left-hand table, we raise King Jack offsuit first in on the button, part of about a 44% raise first in range. The big blind 3-bets us to a small size, only about 3x, which means I can defend those 3-bets a lot wider, but I'm going to be very cautious about doing it with some of these offsuit dominated, Broadway hands like King Jack offsuit. So I'm going to go ahead and fold that one. I'm much more inclined to start adding mid and small pocket pairs, suited connectors, suited gapper type hands, suited ace-X hands to my, or even suited king-X type hands to my range. As their 3-bet size gets smaller and dictates that I defend more hands. The hands like King Jack offsuit, Queen 10 offsuit, I'm still going to be very, very cautious with. Raise 5s first in from middle position. About a 21% raise first in range. We get squeezed. Pretty healthy size from the small blind as well. I'm already going to be pretty tight in that spot against an appropriately sized raise. Maybe something like pocket 7s through queens, suited broadways, and ace-king if I don't 4-bet it. In this squeeze spot, I'm probably going to turn hands like queens and ace-king offsuit that I would often flat in position heads up into hands that are just going to 4-bet and stack off. And I'm going to be a lot tighter with my calls because I neither close the action nor have position post-flop. Could also get back jammed over the top. Hand like 5s where I wouldn't even defend it heads up, I'm going to certainly fold it against the squeeze. Upper left-hand table, blind on blind. We'll raise the ace-3 offsuit first in. I'll raise all my offsuit aces blind on blind. About a 45% raise first in range, and I'll check range to the in-position player on the 10-3 deuce rainbow. He bets small. I'm going to go ahead and check call this. I think if I had ace-3 with the backdoor flush draw, I would go ahead and check raise that just because ace-3 is a good 3x to raise, because if we hit trips, we can cooler him should he also be playing the 3x type hands. So I'd prefer to check raise ace-3 over a hand like 3-8, 3-7 or something like that, 3-6. I also want the flush draw, so I've just got more ways to, make nice big hands for big pots. Min raise from middle position, button calls. We're going to go ahead and squeeze out of the small blind with pocket nines. We'll squeeze about 9% here. In position player calls with the initial pre-flop raiser does not. We're going to go ahead and put in the small range bet on the queen jack 6 two-tone board. I'm going to keep checking my ace-3 and just try to show down the winner over here on the upper left-hand table. He bets small. I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a check raise bluff, given that very small sizing. I'm not repping a whole lot here, but I don't know that that really matters. Lower left-hand table, blind on blind, or I'm sorry, middle position raises first in, and we 3-bet from the button with king queen suited. We're going to go ahead and put in the small range bet on 9-3 deuce two-tone. I really think he has a hand like 10x. He was trying to value bet thinly, and I think I can move him off of it. He's thinking about it, probably because my line doesn't make all that much sense. Yeah, he had exactly what I thought he had, but I could not make him fold it. I wonder if that line is as effective in the blind v blind spots as it is elsewhere. Check raising the river when they use those smaller sizes. Lower left-hand table, raise middle position first in with queen jack, or about a 21% raise first in range. Somewhat weak big blind player comes along. We get a jack 9-4 two-tone flop. I'll go ahead and put in a small range bet on that. Upper left-hand table will raise ace-jack first in from middle position. Also about a 21% raise first in range there. We get check raised with a small size, about half pot. We've got top pair. We block the flush draws, backdoor flush draw. You have backdoor straight draws. I think I'm going to go ahead and call at least one time there. Upper left-hand table, we get a recreational player calls out of the small blind, jack 6-4 two-tone. We have top pair, top kicker. We'll go ahead and put in a small range bet on the flop. Lower left-hand table, the 8 is an interesting card on the turn. In that, a straight is possible, but we actually block it. He bets half pot. I think I need to be calling again for half pot with top pair, and we've got that straight draw blocker. Fairly passive, so I feel like the river, if he bets, is not going to be bluffed nearly often enough, but I'll wait till I see exactly what he does before I start jumping to any conclusions on that. He bets a pretty large size. I don't really know that this guy's as fishy as I first thought he was either. It was based on a limp, and he's only limped the one time, which could be a misclick. We're also in a tighter formation, which I think means we can go ahead and let this one go. Upper right-hand table, we'll raise deuces first in, part of about a 44% raise first in range. Small blind calls, a weak, fishy small blind player. We're going to go ahead and range bet him small on the king, king, queen two-tone board. Playing with fire, shuffling a table up, but this lower left-hand table just isn't that good. Lower right-hand table, we'll raise middle position first in with queen jack suited, part of about a 21% raise first in range. Min raise from the cutoff in the upper left-hand table. Go ahead and defend pretty much all of our suited cards, including queen 4 suited. We'll check range out of the big blind. 6-5-3 rainbow gives us an open-ended straight draw and a backdoor flush draw to go with our overcard. We now have the straight on the 7 of clubs as well as the backdoor flush draw. We're going to go ahead and start jabbing at this pot small. A loose passive recreational player raises first in from the cutoff 3x. I have the ace-king. Now, I'm not going to give him credit for having a hand that beats me just because he's been very tight so far, but he's only raised 6% over 88 hands, so he clearly is extremely tight with his raises pre-flop. That said, I've got to go ahead and 3-bet this. You know, if I get 4-bet, all of a sudden we have a decision to make. But you know, this is not the slam dunk 3-bet we would like it to be under normal circumstances. Now, we get cold 4-bet. I think that's a player that we just saw us check raise bluff him not too long ago, blind on blind. We have ace-king. Ace-king is too good to go ahead and fold there. The only thing that gives me pause is if he realizes how passive that guy is and thinks that I'm going to be tighter with my 3-bet range and his cold 4-bet range should also be more snug. I've got ace-king. I'm not going to outthink it. I'm just getting that in. Up against queens, so we're racing. As long as I'm not against aces or kings, I'm fine. Get a min raise under the gun. On the lower left-hand table, I 3-bet pocket nines from middle position. 3-betting about 9% against that. Get called by a fishy in-position player as well. We get a jack-6-3 monotone flop. I'm going to go ahead and check range to the in-position player on that board. Probably checking pretty much any board with an in-position player there, multi-way. I've got pocket nines, no club. He bets half pot. I'm just going to go ahead and get out of the way with that. You know, if I've got a club, it gets a bit dicier. I think I've got to go ahead and call. But without the club, I think it's safe to just go ahead and fold. And in case we had any doubt about him being a recreational player, he shows that he is cold calling 3-bets under the gun versus middle position when he's in the cutoff with jack-3 suited. So we know we have a good mark here to go against where we can just pick up the right situation to punish him for doing what he does. I had this guy tagged as a fish, but that's probably not accurate. It was probably just based on a fluky limp. He's 22-16 with only one real limp in his range. I'm going to treat him like a reg. That said, I'm going to 3-bet a regs 3x under the gun open with a hand like King 10 suited. We got about an 8% 3-bet range here. Upper left-hand table will raise cutoff first in with King Queen's offsuit, part of about a 21% range. We're going to raise up the limper out of our blinds with ace-10 offsuit. Calls, we're going to go ahead and range bet small on that 6-5 deuce two-tone board. Against the check raise with overcards but no back doors, we can just go ahead and fold that one out. Upper left-hand table, a fishy player from the small blind calls us. We're going to go ahead and range bet small on the King-Jack-4 rainbow board. He check calls, turns the 7 of diamonds. It's a pretty innocuous card, doesn't close or complete anything. There is a backdoor flush draw out there. I'm going to be using the overbet or check size on this texture on a hand like top pair second kicker is firmly in the overbet line here against that player. Really against a reg as well, but especially against a fish. And that King 10 suited 3-bet against a 3x under the gun open, that's a little bit on the cusp. You could go either way with that. Not necessarily a mistake, but it's close. Upper right-hand table, a recreational player limps from what is effectively the cutoff. The small blind completes. We'll check in with our 10-8 offsuit. Against that pot size bet from the limper on the ace king 10 two-tone board, we'll just go ahead and fold our third pair. Well played by the small blind to win a big pot off the recreational player that's never going to fold the jack. In fact, he snapped with ace 7. That's just silly, but 3x open from the cutoff. Even in a standard player, ace 9's a bit too loose to defend. Against a recreational player that's been very loose and passive, I think that's just going to be a hand we go ahead and fold. Upper right-hand table, we'll raise the button first in with king 8 suited, part of about a 44% raise first in range, and 10-8 offsuit on the upper left-hand table is a fine raise blind on blind. Small blind facing an under the gun 2.5x open. We can go ahead and squeeze with the ace 5 suited. I was going to defend that min raise with the king 8 suited, but when we get the cold 4-bet to 25, we can just go ahead and fold our king 8. For left-hand table, we'll raise the cutoff with ace queen offsuit. Use about a 28% raise first in range there. Squeeze gets through on the lower left-hand table. That's pretty standard. With the shorter stack player out there, it's a little bit dicier because it's easier for him to back jam on us. So there may be some merit to tightening up, but I don't know that you really want to pass up on too many squeeze opportunities because they're just so profitable as long as you don't overdo it too much. 3x open. A player that's very tight and loose and passive. It seems like he's been raising a bit more lately, but not enough for I'm going to start defending the marginal aces, marginal offsuit aces for a 3x open. You know, we've been at this table with this guy for about 100 hands, and he's really only raised 8 of them so far. Lower right-hand table, button limps. There is no small blind. We'll check the big blind with queen 9, and then we'll check out of the big blind on the flop. We do have top and bottom pair on the monotone board. Turn is the jack, which is not a great card for us as it counterfeits our 2 pair and makes the jack's trips that beat us, but we are still going to go ahead and put in a min bet with our top pair. I think there's actually a bit more merit in this particular spot to checking and trying to pick off a bluff from 10x or random spades and trying to get called by worse, given that middle paired texture. Lower left-hand table, we raise the cutoff first in with ace 9 suited, about a 28% raise first in range. He had pocket threes, which is a just raise that pre-flop and be done with it. We'll check range blind on blind on that King Jack 9. 9 turn, we're going to go ahead and start jabbing at that pot small. Calls. River is the king. Really got to turn my hand into a bluff here and try to fold out a jack, a 10, ace high. Even a flush might get a bit unlikely to call down here. Snaps me with ace high, so my plan didn't work. But it seems like the river bluffs are getting through a bit less the last couple of days. That's probably just short-term variance, but something I want to keep my eye on is typically river bluffing is very profitable. But games will eventually change over time. Blind on blind, the upper left-hand table, 9-6 suited is a fine hand to defend, so we're going to go ahead and call with that. We have only some marginal backdoors. He bets 2/3. I'm just going to go ahead and fold that. I normally don't call too much with a limper and then an ISO, but the ISO is small. I'm not that worried about this guy back jamming. Got an ideal hand to call out of position as well from the big blind, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it and then check to both players. Upper left-hand table, get a recreational player limps the cutoff. I'm going to raise out of the small blind to 150% of pot, about $11 with ace-king offsuit. When the limp call player leads for pot, I'm just going to go ahead and fold my sevens on Jack, King Jack 10 two-tone. Upper left-hand table, we're going to go ahead and raise the button with Jack 4 suited. Lower right-hand table, raise middle position with King 8 suited. Upper left-hand table, go ahead and range bet heads up on the 9-6-5 rainbow flop. Get led into in this multi-way pot with King 8 on 10-7-7. I'm just going to go ahead and fold that. Upper left-hand table, turn is the 6 of diamonds. It gives us the flush draw, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the bet. I'm going to be using the overbet here, overbet texture on this spot. I'm going to be overbetting or checking on that particular card. We take it down. Min raise from that loose passive player on the upper left-hand table. We'll defend our big blind with 5-7. Blind on blind, lower right-hand table, get a 3x open. We have pocket 8s. I'm going to go ahead and defend that with a call. I like to 3-bet 9s or better, but I think 8s play a bit better as the call. Upper left-hand table, we turned trips on that monotone board with that 7. Now we made the full house with that 5. I think I want to go ahead and overbet and try to get paid here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a 2x pot bet. Super strong hand. Recreational players tend to be relatively inelastic, meaning they don't change their calling range correctly enough as the sizes get larger. So it's probably in most cases better to not bluff them for overbets, but size up for your value hands when you have a very strong hand that can be called by worse. And he had 5-4, so he called me down with just Pair of fives on 10, 6, 7, 7, 5. Even for the overbet size. The eights, I think I just want to check them and show them down. Yeah, I think 10x. I'm probably not folding 10x out too easily there. Now on the upper right-hand table, the cutoff raise first in. We 3-bet, and then we get 4-bet. 4-bet to a relatively small size. I'm going to go ahead and use queens to call. I would jam back all in with my aces, or I'm sorry, with my ace king and my kings. I would trap with aces, and I would defend a variety of pocket pairs and suited Broadway type cards. And it's not that I don't think that they're good, it's that I want to sort of under rep and sort of trap continuation bets from ace king and stuff like that. Probably call like queens through nines, ace queen, ace jack, king queen suited type hands. Maybe a few more because his 4-bet sizing was on the small size. He goes ahead and bets the flop small about, I think he bet about 1/3. Yeah, he bet 20 into 80, about a quarter. So we just go ahead and continue. Now with the queens, we're going to go ahead and put in a small bet ourselves. I can have pocket tens here. I can have aces. I think queens. I think I'll just check back. I don't like letting the ace of hearts peel, but although I can still actually have aces full and quads here, so my range is in no way capped. I guess I could also have king queen of hearts for the nut flush. Yeah, I'll take my check down here now. At large open, I'm not really going to be defending very much for a call of the big blind. It's going to be almost all 3-bets or folds. Recreational player limps the middle position. We're going to go ahead and isolate him from the button. Uses something like our cutoff raise first in range, about 28%. Get a Jack-Jack 10 rainbow board. Also going to shut down this session here and take a little break when the blinds come around. He leads into me for a little less than 40% of pot. I'm going to float that at least once with the sixes. And now he goes and overbet jams the turn for about 175% or so of pot. I'm just going to go ahead and fold out against the jam. Little bit suspicious, but recreational players sometimes overly merge their hands. They make polarization mistakes. He could be doing that with some kind of 10x type hand. I don't think I can fold my overpairs. I obviously never fold in a jack or a full house. Of course, I'm trying to get those in. I don't think I'm folding my overpairs there against that. I'm probably going to call down with ace 10 and king 10. I think right around there is where the line is. Maybe king 10 is kind of the rubber hand. I think worse than that, I can just let him go. We isolate that same guy when he limps under the gun. This time we do it from the cutoff with something like our middle position raise first in, about a 21% range. We have ace 10 offsuit. The flop is 10-6-3 two-tone. We'll go ahead and put in a small range bet. As of right now, we feel pretty good about our hand and consider our hand to be the best one. Upper left-hand table, raise king-queen offsuit from middle position. About a 21% raise first in range in this spot. Get called in position, get called by a recreational player to the blind, and the big blind comes along as well. Multi-way, we're not in position, so should it check to me, I'm just going to be checking my range, even though I do have top pair. Check range to the in-position player. Hand is reasonably safe. He bets about 2/3. Going to go ahead and check call with my top pair. Certainly not folding, but no reason to check raise that against that bet size with that multi-way action. Now, I think the move is going to be to go ahead and try to value bet this as opposed to bluff catch. Could put me on some kind of busted flush draw here and call down with a hand like pocket eights. Lower left-hand table, we'll raise queens under the gun. Got about an 18% raise first in range there. I want to see what it is he called me with. Oh, he had queen 10, so he had a worse queen, so it wasn't even like I really got heroed or anything like that. He might have value bet the river as well had I checked. We get called by a recreational player in position. We get an ace 10-9 two-tone board. We check range. He checks back. Turn is a 9, board pairing 9. And I'm going to go ahead and just jab at this pot small with my pocket queens. And we take it down right away. And that's going to be it. That's the last hand for the session. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, this is Charlie Murphy signing off.